Hey everyone, can you hear me? I hope so, because I'm just going to keep talking. I'm Frances Dowell, and welcome to Textile Talks. We have an amazing, oh, thank you, CCBB. I appreciate that. I want to say, we have a great show today. We really do. We have a wonderful program for you today, and I am here with my colleague Lucy Shaken, who is going to be in charge of the slides. And when you hear me say slide, that's when Lucy will change. The slides for me. So let me get to my script. Hello, and welcome to Textile Talks. I am Frances O'Roark Dowell. I'm an author, a teacher, a quilt maker, and a Quilt Alliance board member. I want to thank you for joining us today. We are so proud to welcome two guest presenters today, Cordy Joan and D. Allen of Transmissions Quilts, a project that makes quilts for trans people. And slide. Textile Talks is a weekly series presented on Wednesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern Time by the Quilt Alliance and our three partner organizations shown here: the International Quilt Museum, the Studio Art Quilt Associates, and Surface Design Association. All Textile Talks are recorded and available via YouTube. Lucy will enter the link for the Textile Talks YouTube recording playlist in the chat box now, and I will also ask her to put a link to our Textile Talks donation page because your support in any amount is always appreciated. And our next slide. All right. Can you hear me? Someone just posted that you can. Okay, someone posted that they can't. Yes, thank you. Okay, let us keep going then. Um, so the Quilt Alliance's mission is to document, preserve, and share the stories of all quilts and all quilt makers. Our projects include Quilters Save Our Stories, QSOS, which is a collection of oral history interviews with quilters, archived with our partners at the Library of Congress and the University of Kentucky. QSOS was launched 26 years ago in 1999. Our video documentation project is called Go Tell It, and anyone who would like to share a quilt story can participate. To find out more about the Quilt Alliance and our projects, visit our website and consider becoming a member or a donor. We rely on this kind of community support to carry out our important mission. Slide. Okay. Here's a little technical stuff. A quick reminder, please use the Q&A box for questions and the chat box for greeting others and letting us know about technical issues. Please look for the survey that will pop up in your browser when we end today. Your commentary and suggestions for improvement are much appreciated. And we have enabled Zoom's closed captions feature. If you prefer not to view captions, you should be able to turn them off by finding the CC or Live Captions button or go within your Zoom settings. Okay, and slide. We would like to thank our colleague, quilt collector and author Roderick Kerkhoff, for connecting us to Cordy Joan, founder of Transmissions Quilts. Cordy Joan is a quilter, dyer, and oral historian living in the East Bay. They often teach and learn with young people, particularly queer and trans teens. They are drawn to the crossover between quilts and poetry, and they love to swim. Cordy is interested in the time scales that quilts live within. When we lay under them, we are connected to the hands and intentions of generations ago. When we make them ourselves, we think of how far down the line they will travel. How is our art making influenced when we make it with this time scale in mind? How do our knots change when we expect that level of durability? How do we encase secrets, messages, power into a piece when we anticipate our grandchildren sleeping under it? Cordy is the lead artist, and organizer of the Transmissions Quilts project, with a broad role of facilitating all arms of quilt making, artist support, grant writing, events, and exhibitions. D. Allen is a writer and a multidisciplinary artist, using poetic and essayistic forms and a range of other artistic media. Dee's work explores the body, illness, disability, the natural world, sexuality, and gender. Their first book, A Bony Framework for the Tangible Universe, is a hybrid collection of text and images about queer disabled embodiment. Dee's long-running series of experimental solo performances, Network, brings together large-scale textile installations, quilts, sound, video projection, movement, and rest on stage. Cordy and D recorded a conversation on January 26 about how the project started, their motivations, and how the project is designed, and how you can help. We'll have a brief Q&A time with Cordy Joan and Dee in the last part of the hour, so please feel free to enter your questions for them at any time in the Q&A box as you listen. Now, let's watch their interview.
Yeah. Hi. So my name is Dee Allen. My pronouns are they, them. And I am coming here from Richmond, Virginia. But my heart lives in South Minneapolis, where I lived from 2014 to 2024. We're recording this on January 26th. So just for context of that, that's where my heart is living. I am a disabled writer and artist, and I recently finished making a quilt for the Transmissions project, which is what we're here to talk about today. So, Cordy, I would love if you could introduce yourself and then give us just a brief description of what the Transmissions project is as a starting point.
Yeah. Thanks, Dee.
Yeah.
I'm so happy to be talking today. I am Cordy, they, them, and I'm speaking in Oakland, California, where I've lived for 5.5 years, originally from the East, New Jersey. But quilts came to me in California. So, yeah, and you mentioned the quilt you just made. That is lovely. And I just 10 minutes ago was putting into a box to mail to its resting home down in Southern California. So it was sweet to be able to hold your work today before talking to you. Yeah, so Transmissions or Transmissions Quilts for Trans People is a project that I started in like the public way about, I think it's 2 years ago. Around this time, we got our first grant, but I have been doing versions of the project for a couple years longer than that, just in my own practice. And the idea is to make quilts for individually nominated trans people. So, it lives in lineage with so many other quilting projects throughout time and cultures that use quilts to mark life transitions. Often we think of like birth, marriage, sometimes divorce, death, those are kind of the four that I've seen. And the idea of this is like, can we as trans and genderqueer people kind of crack open that concept and create a space for ourselves in it to mark transitions that we're going through, which are not capital T transition. Like, this is not going to people who are all doing the same medical pursuit of self, or doesn't go with a name change necessarily. It doesn't mark anything specific that you can hold in your hand or put on your calendar, but it is like sometimes use the term arrival quilts, like they're welcoming people who have fought to arrive as themselves. They're like welcoming us to ourselves. And they're all made by trans artists, and teams of trans artists. So it's partially about the quilts, and it starts with an oral history interview each time, and sometimes it flows through other types of art making, and then it ends with the quilts. So that's the brief explanation. I hope it was clear.
I think that was perfect. Yeah, you hit all the points. And I really love what you said about not big T transition, because it's not a uniform, it's not one single thing, I think. The quilts are meaning all different things to all different people within the project. So thank you for that. Would you just tell us a little bit about how quilting became a practice in your life, like when and where and how that started for you?
Yeah, so I was before quilting, I was kind of in like broader textile dabbling world. I was living, speaking of the Midwest, I was living in Wisconsin for a winter, and a friend gave me an embroidery hoop and was like, "You're about to be really sad and alone. You should like have this." And that was the winter that I just like became obsessed with embroidery and like did the tiniest, most intentional stitches to date. And that kind of blossomed into some like basket weaving courses I like took with like a native elder in Wisconsin, and some like natural dyeing. And then I kind of was like bopping around worlds and experienced myself as like enjoying each of those things, but then getting bored of them and moving on to the next. And then when I came upon quilts as a concept, I felt like they were kind of a perfect answer to me being a bored person, because they contain all of those things. There's so many steps to a quilt, that on any given day, if I'm bored of embroidery, I can go dye fabric instead. Or if I really want to be holding a needle, I can do that. So I love, there are just so many like terrains in a quilt that allow for each of my different selves. So yeah, the first quilt I made accidentally became this project. I was dating a person who showed me a baby blanket that had been made for them when they were born, and kind of it was folded up in the corner, clearly didn't get much use, and they like introduced it kind of as this complicated object that was both beautiful and also not made for the right person. I think their birth name was embroidered on it. I think just the whole vibe felt like, oh, this was sweet. A family member gave it to me, and the care was there, but it felt it's not right. So it stays folded and not used. So I just kind of tried to make a quilt for them as like the proper quilts for them. And looking back on it from like a craftsmanship perspective, I would say it was definitely my first. I had no idea that like dense quilting lines is a useful decision. But yeah, I like dyed a bunch of fabric and like infused this love I had for a person into that piece, and then gave it to them, and then that became this project.
I don't think I knew that. That's really beautiful, and just like interesting too that like my oral history conversation with my recipient sort of started or centered around the quilt that she received when she was born, which she really loved and has been like loved to shreds and is long gone, but had really fond memories of. And then I was also thinking about the one that was made for me. But yeah, they're for depending on where you are generational, I think for many of us, many of them were made like with a little bit of a prescription or assumptions gender wise about, what someone would be what would align with a person's being. And so I think that's really beautiful way of repairing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense to me that the way that transmissions exist now kind of emerged from that place. So thank you.
Yeah. 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 It's kind of the origin story. And then from there, and I was just making more of them as gifts for friends. And
Yeah.
so there's that, like, there was the first one, and then there's the season I refer to as the prologue, which I was just like making gifts for friends. And then 2 years ago is when some people around me kind of gave the nudge, like this actually
Mm.
might have legs for sharing more broadly. And that's when the project got its name and like its first grant, basically. And now it's more formal.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think that a lot of projects have that sort of like there's the first thing that seems like a one-off and then a prologue chapter and then it becomes actually what it's trying to be. Yeah. Well, so I first found out about the project through an Instagram post. A Midwestern fiber artist that I follow on Instagram had reshared something from you that I think was a call for quilters. And I like stopped I think it was in the kitchen or something. I like stopped what I was doing and was sort of like living a very bleak, complicated, isolated time in my life in Northern Virginia with a friend and her family, and was just kind of like didn't have a lot to hold on to in my creative work life. And so I saw that and reached out to you. And then from there, it kind of, we've been in conversation in some way since then. And so that's sort of how I came to it. I would love to hear, I mean, you just kind of answered my question about like how the seed got planted for the project and how it, but I guess, so we've talked about the seeds, but from the end of the prologue, when it became, when you started involving other people and creating like sort of a clear collective vision, I think I'd love to hear like how we got from that point to where we are now in this moment.
Yeah. Yeah, I so vividly remember that phone call with you. I feel like when you reached out, it was like I don't remember the exact chronology, but you reaching out and like what I was able to do, like learn about you online and see some of the like incredible large scale knits and performances you've done. I'm thinking of the like lit large knit projection performance thing. Those are not the right words, but
it's okay. Yeah.
I remember feeling that if like you, the maker of that, were reaching out and wanted to be part of this, it was like real in some way. So
thank you.
Yeah, so what was in between those? So it was big, the first like this is real moment was probably getting to ultimately small grants, but like even one from a Quilters Guild out here, the East Bay Heritage Quilters in the Bay, and then one from Berkeley Civic Arts here in the Bay. And I think just the kind of little stamp of possibility and approval that came with that helped immediately like grow it in my mind. And I think in that moment, I put out a call for nominations. So that was when it shifted from I was making gifts for friends who I knew. Suddenly, the call was nominations for people to receive quilts. So then it's, okay, now we're starting to make for strangers. And then once a lot of nominations came in, I was like, oh, for sure, I actually can't do this myself. I'm the only trans quilter I know at this moment, but I need to put a call out for help because in my mind at that moment, it was like, I'm going to make 20 of these.
Yeah.
And I can do that in a year. I can probably do 20 quilts in a year. That's great. That's like, sure, I'll figure it out.
We'll talk about this when you have such a different time scale than I do. It's amazing.
But then that was like the diluted version of, and then when I actually sat with it, I was like, no, can't do that. Don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Each object would suffer as a result. Like, let's see if anyone else in the world wants to participate. Put out a call for quilters, and a bunch of people responded, and that was just through Instagram. So then suddenly there was a big crew of quilters, a big crew of possible recipients. I like asked two close friends and collaborators here to become the three of us are now directors of this, started building out a more standard process for making each quilt. So previously it was just me making for friends. So I was like, I know the person, I'm making a gift for my friend. But suddenly it was strangers making for each other. How do we make a quilt that represents someone when we don't know them? So that's when we wrote the oral history interview into the process. It also became really important to me to crack out of just textiles. A lot of the people who were interested in participating were like fell into a certain band of like white trans non-binary 30-year-olds who were trying to revitalize their like family fiber line, which is awesome, and I relate, and
Yeah.
where I live also. And it's
Yeah.
important to me that, especially when I was looking at fundraising and like thinking about a project that's meant to hold a lot of people, I was like, we need to design it so that more of our people can be here.
Yeah.
So there's this middle step where each recipient could choose other artists, trans artists in their life working across mediums to submit a piece. So that allowed us to get everything from like chainmail to animation to song and poem.
Yeah.
So many different submissions, which all were in service of kind of introducing the quilter to their recipient. So then the quilter, in that round of quilts, the quilter received an interview and received 3 pieces of art. And that was kind of their like welcome basket. Like, here's your person, make a piece now. And then they made a quilt, and we made the first 14. And then your quilt that you just made was made in a slightly different way, because one of the pieces of feedback from the first round was that quilters wanted to actually just kind of talk with their person. And
yeah, that was really important for me. I know.
Multiple steps removed.
Yeah.
So we now it's more about like the quilter and the recipient getting a chance to form their own relationship. I don't know if any of that was clear, but that's...
Oh, it was. Yeah. Yeah, no, totally. I mean, this would be, you had wanted to ask me a question about my process with making the quilt for the project. So I think this would be a natural moment to do that if you...
you, like I said, I was just holding your quilt today, and your quilt lives in the round where quilters and quilt recipients got to talk directly. Can you share like how you made your quilt and what it's like talking directly to your recipient?
Yeah, I mean, for me, that was just like such an essential part. My art practice and writing practice in general, and quilt making in particular, are really relational, as I'm sure for many of us. But I primarily sort of like more as like a spiritual identity and less as like a genre profession identity. I really identify as a poet, but I have like roots in journalism, and just conversations and relating are really important to my process. And so the fact that we started, you reached out to me and said, hey, I know you were thinking about making a quilt for the project later this year, but I actually have a recipient who I think would be a good match for you. Do you want to start soon? And I had just moved to Richmond and was sort of getting my bearings. And it sort of was like it gave shape to my year last year, the like sort of 6-month arc of making the quilt start to finish. And it started with having this, hour-ish long conversation with my recipient, who was traveling at the time. And so we just kind of like found each other where we were. And that conversation was really just impactful for me in a lot of ways. She's also a writer. She's also a wheelchair user, as I am. And we found just like more sort of synchronicities than I think you could have realized when you put us together. And so one thing that we that we touched on a lot in our conversation that was really important to the physical making of the quilt for me was that found objects and reclaimed, repurposed secondhand materials are really important to both of us in our own lives. And that's my primary way of approaching textiles. I think for the quilt that you have currently in your possession for her, that I think the only new thing I bought was the batting. And so just knowing that she and I aligned in that way, and then I could sort of like carry our conversation with me into the scrap store and the thrift store and my own fabric stash from my mom and Nana and friends' clothes. And, I think I have actually next to me this, I found some like an antique tea towel that was cross stitched at the junk shop in my neighborhood. I got like 4 of them. And used 2 of them in the quilt. So that
I was going to jump in and say that was the part of your quilt I was going to shout out. That's central.
Thank you, thank you. Yeah, well, there was one mismatched one from the same maker that I kept for myself as sort of a reminder of that work. So, I think so. That was really important. I can't really imagine doing it without that conversation element. And then for me, like I'm more of a folk quilter, I guess, in the sense of like, I'm not going in with a geometric pattern that I want to cut out the pieces for. I'm doing more of like a piece a little bit and then cut it up and see. And then I had sort of more of like a kaleidoscopic composition process for this one. And so like, I'm not obsessed with corners meeting and things like that. Although I really love and respect those quilts, but it's like really not how my brain works. So yes, yeah. Well, which is, I think, one thing I really love about the way you've shaped the project is there's not a right or wrong way to make a quilt. And it's not rigid in that way.
Yeah. Well, I'm just obsessed with the piece you made, and I can't wait for it to fly through the air and land with her. So
yeah. Well, one thing I want to just sort of talk about with that is, for me, the way that you shaped you and now like other trans artists who are participating in shaping the vision of the project. It's really important to me that this is a vision of like trans people making quilts for other trans people to wrap around each other's shoulders. And there's not this sort of like charity approach of like, oh, everyone volunteer to make a quilt for a poor oppressed trans person. This sense of like, we are really doing this horizontally with and for each other. And even if, as in this case, like it's for a stranger, there's still connection building there, and there's still like some kind of kernel of shared experience, even if we all have really different lives and relationships to gender and to trans identity. So I wondered if you would just talk about what it's been like to work with so many different trans people and connect us to each other.
Yeah, it felt very important to me that it's essentially all trans artists. There's a couple of like there are many quilting bees involved, and we're able to invite more community in. But to me, it's partially because all the positions are being paid, and the goal is to get money to trans artists, and partially, like you were saying, this is not, unfortunately, the example I will use in contrast. No offense to anyone on this call who might be a part of this kind of project, but like a NICU baby quilt project, like a charity model of like, there's a poor shivering person, I need to pity them. And that's, I feel just really strongly that that's not what this is. And trying to create a structure in the project that reflects that, like this is not only about the recipient, although it is. It's also like when I think of the interviews as oral history interviews, to me, they differ from a lot of oral history projects because they're meant to be two-sided. So it's two trans people in conversation. The interview guide, which I have written with support from other people, has questions that go in both directions. It's sometimes confusing when you read the guide, but it's like, okay, now the recipient asks the quilter. And to me, that creates this like both people are present in the quilt. I firmly believe in the part of quilting that is like making gifts and acknowledging both the giver and the receiver, these like two anchor points, and like what's the piece that exists between them. Like a good gift represents the Venn diagram between two people, as opposed to like the invisible quilter or the prolific quilter who just like makes art pieces and then they go into QuiltCon or whatever. That's also cool. No one you're allowed to be offended by anything I say. It's just not how I work. I like the lane of quilts I have found for myself, but it is not make a quilt with no recipient in mind and put it on a wall and like wait for the gasps. It's like I want to know the person on the other end and I want to make the thing that is only for them. And that's how this project is designed.
Well, I think what you're getting at is that their quilts are not one thing, as all of us here who have anything to do with quilts know. They mean different things to almost every person who has feelings about them or interacts with them. And what follows is that, like the vision for this project is not the same as other visions, and that's okay. And also I would imagine that I know one other quilter in the project because we both used to live in Minneapolis. But I don't know personally any of the other quilters involved, I think. And so I'm imagining that all of us come with different levels of quilt making experience, different like feelings about making quilts, different timelines, as you and I have talked about, different relationships to material and construction and all of that. And so I think, what I appreciate is that there's space for all of that. It's not like a rigid prescription of what it should be.
Yeah. And I think there in some way will show a gallery in some form. But what I hope it conveys is that there's like so many different styles of quilts present. We've got the like extreme piecers who I can't relate to but admire. We've got the like people who have never made a quilt before, and in those cases I often like try to pair a less experienced quilter with a more experienced one, and then they like learn how to put a binding on for the first time together. That's I love that part of the project as quilts and quilting bees and queer people taking care of each other as like sharing skills and knowledge and like passing down the lines, and all that's here.
Absolutely. I just want to sort of encapsulate some of the things you've said in just concrete terms, like, because I think it's really important to talk about the reach of this work, which is so you're in year 3 now of, sort of the timeline we talked about. You have now involved 174 trans artists and quilt recipients combined, 46 quilts that are made or in progress for trans people, $73,000 paid to trans artists, and $9,000 raised for other like community causes and support avenues. So I just think it's important to lay that out for folks, because that's really big. That's a lot. And so I guess in that vein, like, I don't know, what's your vision for the next year and beyond of the project?
All of that, those are the right numbers.
I tried.
To hear them out loud. It's true. So the goal is to make and deliver 50 of these. So that will be done this year.
Yeah.
The subtext of those like fundraising and money related things is that it's like been a really heavy administrative lift
Yeah.
to run this. And I feel the like, there's also we have this year we're going to be going on tour, sometimes we share the quilts and associated art and oral histories in exhibitions. So we have a plan to have 8 shows across the Midwest, East, and one in the UK this spring and summer. So there's like all of the admin and fundraising associated with that. So I feel like we are going really hard this year. And also like my capacity is like kind of sees this wrapping this year as like an official big public thing. There are so many more nominations in my computer for who I want to receive quilts that won't be in that 50, but I just like when I know that I will keep making quilts long after this is wrapped, and I just hope that I can keep doing this because I still believe in it really strongly and want to get more quilts to more trans people.
Yeah.
Just probably will do it in a less like official, paid, organized, public, collaborative way. I'll just keep doing it myself. This year we're also we're like starting to pull together a project book, sort of an anthology of writings based on different themes that have come up, including like what is it like to make quilts, make and deliver quilts during a genocide? What is it like for a young quilter to make a quilt for a trans elder, when oftentimes we think of quilts as being made by olders for youngers? What is it like for someone who's pretty much spending most of their life in their bed to be making a quilt and receiving a quilt? There's like a lot of big life themes present in the project that the hope is this collection of writings, poems, interviews, essays will kind of touch on.
Yeah.
And then the last thing I want to share, which is going to seem like a maybe random, but we are working on a project album, like a sound art album, because quilts have such a incredible history of being connected to sound, both like narrative storytelling and oral history. Like people sharing stories over the quilting frame, people telling stories to their loved ones as they drift off into sleep, and also non-narrative sound music. And I love the crannies of textile world where I learn about people like singing together to establish a beat that they then weave to or felt to, or so we have this album going where 7 musicians were each given a quilt and are making a sound piece in response, and they're starting to come in and they're beautiful, and I'm so excited to share it with the world. But yeah, we're trying. One of the like claims of the project is that quilts are so much more than just the medium of fabric, and we have always like held hands across mediums and communities. So we're trying to kind of flex on that and show off how that's actually possible with sound and writing and other things. But
no, I don't think I'd heard you talk about that really. So thank you for sharing that. I'm really excited for all the different I don't know, like I think of like a prism that casts little lights everywhere, you know, just like all the different things that are coming off of this collective work. And yeah, I just want to say too, one way that the quilts are interfacing with the public besides like in-person gallery exhibitions and stuff is the photographs
Oh,
of
yeah.
either the recipients or another person holding the quilt and embodying it and wrapping it around themselves. And that was for me really early on, really powerful way of seeing, because it's not the same as like the photograph a quilt against a white wall in sort of a professional gallery CV residency application kind of way. Like this is about quilts being with people's bodies. And it was really fun for me to have a friend photograph the quilt before I sent it off to you, holding it up in my wheelchair and just like the wheels peeking out and just feeling really like quilt cyborg vibes.
Yeah. Not only the wheels picking up, but your boots and your red laces.
Oh yeah. Thank you.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So just to say that there's like, I don't know, there like even just the portraits afterwards that folks are making that you're having
Yeah.
leading the charge on that, I think has been a really special part of the project that I appreciate a lot. I'm thinking of the friend I know who's made 2 quilts now, Nyla, and seeing the quilt wrapped around their most recent recipient was just like, yes, I like by the water on the beach, like incredible. So
Yeah. Yeah, those photo shoots are just kind of breathtaking to me. They started as a chance, kind of this. We had these first couple grants. Sometimes when you get a grant, there's a requirement for a public showcase. One of the project's problems is that, well, we're making gift quilts. What do we show in an exhibition when we give them all away?
yeah,
So we started having these photo shoots with people, which started as solving that need, but then as they were coming through, it was like, oh, whoa, like this is a whole nother branch to this tree and a whole another chance to pay other trans artists and photography. They're not static quilt on wall photos. They're like meant to capture the relationship between the recipient, their quilts, and a landscape that they love. So
yeah.
I guess this is a moment we'll probably drop in the chat some of them, but
Yeah. Well, and I think that's a perfect, we're going to wrap up here in the next couple of minutes, but I think that's a perfect sort of transition to talking about how folks can engage with the work. And one of those ways is that you have some of those prints of the photos are for sale and people can, I actually just found out just through regular like weekly message check-ins with another queer artist who lives not too far from me. We were just talking and I realized that she had, not knowing I was involved in the project or anything about it, she had bought one of the prints.
oh my God.
I think of one of Nyla's quilts and had it like on her wall. And I was like, wait, I'm involved in that. And we were just
I
like,
love that.
so yeah. So I think the prints are a really beautiful way for folks to both support the work financially and also have like visual representation of the power of this work. Yeah.
That's a great segue. Yes. There's a prints sale fundraiser.
Yeah.
Many of the prints those are all sold at 11 by 14. If you're able to be in person at any of our shows, we print out many of them larger, like 2 foot by 3 foot. They're really stunning, large. We'll, I think, include information in the chat about where and when the shows are. Other ways to basically, as one of the main goals of the project is to pay trans people and to pay quilters. So often quilters are making work with no money involved, and that's really beautiful to live in a world where that's not necessary to be in the conversation, and also it's not the world we live in. So trying to pay trans artists meaningfully. We have a GoFundMe, which is going to help us take this on tour and continue to make the rest of the 50 quilts, continue to make this book and sound art album that I mentioned. So if you feel like you're someone who wants to support work in the money way, we would love to hear from you. There's like some people are fully sponsoring quilts. Each quilt costs $2,000 to make and pays 10 trans artists to do so. Um, so some people are like, that's possible in my life. I want to donate $2,000. Other people are like, I want to sponsor one artist, which is $200. Others are like, I want to print $45, or I want to send you $5. All of that has made this possible. And again, just we've paid 90% of all of the money directly to trans artists, and much of the rest is going to things like Palestinian GoFundMe's, fundraising for trans people who have lost SNAP benefits, um, direct medical GoFundMe's. So those are some of the things that your money is touching.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And I'll just say as a last little thing, in addition to that, like finding ways to support trans people in your own communities is incredibly important now more than ever, and not in a charity-based way, but in a like, how to keep people alive right now, and support the work that many of us are already doing unpaid all of the time. So yeah, finding ways to connect to people where you are. And yeah.
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 Definitely that.
Yeah. But also support Transmissions Project.
No, yeah. But if you had to make one choice between those two, I would say that one.
Yeah. 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 Well, thank you so much. This was really fruitful for me, and I hope folks feel like they got a picture of what this all has looked like, and we will include actual pictures. And yeah, anything else you want to say at the end here?
That's it. I just thank you for guiding the conversation and for being part of the project. And yeah, I feel so stoked about it, and I love talking about it. So thanks for the chance to do so, everyone.
Thank you. Yeah, and I look forward to seeing what questions are coming up in the chat. So us from the future will answer that.
Well, could be.
Cool.
Okay.
Hey everyone, Cordy and D, that was amazing. Thank you so much. And if you want to hop on, it was so lively that I forgot that you weren't live. I was, so that's the sign of a really good conversation. And I don't know if you got a chance to watch the chat, read the chat as y'all were talking. Obviously, everyone is really excited and pretty blown away by what y'all are doing. And I certainly am. And we do have some questions. Oh, but I'm supposed to, I think I have a script. Sorry, I've gone off script. Let me see. Welcome to Textile Talks, Cordy Joan and D. Thank you so much for being here. Okay, we're good. Let's go to the Q&A. I think I've covered everything there. And we do have we have some Q&A here. And let me go. Okay, this is a question, and I hope that I'm pronouncing it Kyan or Kian, Kyan. As a disabled trans person, I think a lot about time, both in the sense of histories, lineages, and forms of knowledge, and also in terms of how much time do I have and what it means to value my time, take my time, etc. There were some mentions of this in the interview, but I'm wondering if both or either of you could speak to your thoughts on time, speed, and pacing as a creative. What a great question.
I love that. Yeah, we sort of
that's all you.
We referenced it. Oh, is it? Are you sure?
To me, it's a you start.
Okay.
And I'll take a respond.
Okay. Yeah, I think about this all the time. Disabled writer Ellen Samuels has an amazing short essay called oh gosh, now I'm going to forget the whole title, but it's about the concept of crip time. So the way that disabled people experience and move through time in a different way than normative able-bodied experiences. And it came up a lot for me as a disabled person making a quilt for another disabled person within with a deadline, because I don't know that I had ever made a quilt with a deadline actually. And pretty much all of my I haven't made that many quilts, full sized, fully hand quilted quilts. Maybe like five or less in the last 15 years. And it was actually really challenging for me, to make it in 6 months, from oral history conversation to completion. But I learned a lot about myself, and I don't know. I think that quilts and textiles in general are also a really good way of documenting time. And what I appreciate as a disabled person working in that way is, and I think about this a lot with like my large scale knitted pieces, is that like when the piece is complete, there's no way to discern like how many stitches were made at once, or how many stretches of time elapsed between this part and this part. And there's something really powerful for me about the whole object as a record of time. And just like a lot of us are like living with these objects, like thank you, six ways of looking at, thank you, six ways. I couldn't remember the number. I was like, is it six or 12? Um, uh, yeah. Anyway, so a lot of us are living with the textile work we're making, like in our beds or on our laps, or, in our living spaces, in this very intimate relationship for a long time. So, it was really nice to finish it and send it off. And it was also like, oh, this is like consumed my days for many, many days in a row. So I will go back to making quilts over multiple years. But
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know, Cordy, it was really an interesting conversation for me and Cordy to kind of, most of that conversation happened off camera, but I'd love to hear what you want to add to that.
Totally. Yeah. All of those things. I would say this has been a big edge of the project for me. And hearing me describe it back, like that initial cockiness of 20 myself in a year. And then like as time has gone and working with so many different people of different yeah, accesses to time, people who are working in between multiple jobs, or people who partway through the process lose a family member or get a diagnosis, or bombs are dropped, or soldiers arrive. Like we basically every quilt has come with people asking for more time. And the thing that I want, yeah, I feel humbled and like check yourself on that part. And I'm like sending a lot of how's it going? How's your deadline feel texts? And that's the part I just like honestly feel suspicious of myself whenever I send those. This project has made me, anytime I feel an urgency, I've started to relate to it as a red flag. So that's like partially based on talking with Dee a lot about this.
Hmm. And yet, I think there's, I mean, within reason, and with people's physical and mental, emotional survival, well-being in mind, there's, for me at least, it was like, oh, I did learn a lot from having to trying to do that process in a shorter span of time. And yeah, I don't know. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for the great question.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, that was a super interesting question and response. And I hope everyone has noted Susan was kind enough to put the link to Six Ways of Looking at
Mm,
Quilting in the chat. So
thank
click
you,
on
Susan.
that and you can, I think, copy that and paste it in your notes. Okay, let's go on to the next question. Jan wants to know, where will the show in the UK be?
We're gonna come over to the Festival of Quilts in Birmingham, end of July. We'll have a both an exhibit and a little panel talking about some of these things. So yeah, come through. Tickets go on sale next week, I'm told.
Excellent. Well, we'll look that up. I want to note that Pamela says, D, I love your sweaters. So just feel like
Thank
that's
you, Pamela. Got to bring out the hand knits for the textile talk.
exactly.
Thank you. Thank
Uh,
you.
Audrey says, is this on your radar as you involve music by trans artists? Could be a great place for a collaboration. It's transmusicarchive.org.
Can't wait to learn.
Okay.
Most of the
Not
musicians
familiar.
we're working with right now, some like our artists like kind of fold back into the project. So maybe like a quilt recipient, then becoming an artist, musician, or like bringing in one of their friends. So mostly it's like a self-generative folding, but I would love to hear more about Trans Music Archive. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that link, for that resource. Let's see. Gert was wondering, is this mostly a US based project or is it international? For me, being a European gay male quilter, this gets my mind started. So I wonder if this is a thing on other continents too.
Technically, this is an international project. We've had quilts that have crossed borders. We had but it's kind of hard, honestly. And like quotes get held up or it becomes way more expensive and way more stressful to like feel a quilt flying through the air across customs. We've had quilts, there's a quilt being made in Australia right now and delivered in Australia. So like fully like as the project has gone, like I have kind of released some of my controlling tendencies. I'm like not everything's coming through me anymore. It's like kind of releasing the process to the world. And I think I keep mentioning that we might kind of close up after this summer, but that's just like me fundraising and being able to pay people. But the hope is that if people are moved by this, they can do it in their own community. And I would love to see what you make, Gert. But yeah, technically we're global, but it feels mostly US. But
Okay, thank
technically
you.
we're global.
And Cynthia asks, how are colors chosen based on the recipient preference or what the color represents based on the objects in the quilt?
Maybe we could both talk about specific quilts as case studies for that, because I think every artist and recipient exchange and process was probably pretty different. For me, I the quilt I made ended up being a color palette that was really different for me and different from what I would normally um, gravitate to if kind of left to my own devices. And part of that was emerged out of the constraints of working with secondhand and found and reclaimed materials because you're not going to a fabric shop where you're looking at bolts in every single color of every quantity, and so it was like, what can I find quantity wise that dovetails with what I know about my recipient and also feels like I can relate to it as a maker. But also my recipient, so Cordy just administratively has done incredible work on the back end of this project, like helping people get information passed between recipient and quilter from the beginning, even before the oral history conversation. So there's what do you call it? Like it's just like a form
Intake interview, yeah,
intake
or intake
interview. Okay,
form.
yeah.
Yeah.
So elegant. And so no, I'm sincere. I'm being sincere. So anyway, so my recipient had mentioned two different color combinations, particularly that she liked, and I sort of ended up picking one of those and running with that. And I both kind of I had to let go of some of my like teacher's pet, like I have to do this right kind of way. And Cordy really helped me lovingly with that. But I did also want to make something that had a good chance of like being something that she would love that would like incorporate into her life. So yeah, I worked with a color palette broadly that she had that she had suggested, but I also it was also based on the constraints of what I could find and what spoke to me. So yeah, I'm curious to hear from your end, Cordy, how that has played out.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's the intake form and that includes both like some color preferences. We share examples of other quilts to get like an aesthetic vibe and people are like, I'm drawn to that one, I'm drawn to that one. People also have the chance to send in if they have special fabric in their life or maybe old clothing that like no longer is their vibe, but is special. They can mail it to their quilter and then the quilter is kind of like given this like creative brief. And I do, yeah, it's to me, it's like a fun creative challenge to receive this basket of colors, fabrics, and information and be like, make a quilt for that person. And it might push an edge for you as a quilter. Like that person might not want a heavily pieced quilt. Like what are you going to do with that? I do my best to pair people based on vibe too, but I'm like, sometimes people are like at their edge. Like, I really want this person to love this quilt. What if they don't? And then that creates a whole nother set of questions. Like, do we ever get to control that? And it's like, what is it to just make a piece with our spirit in it and like trust that it will be what it needs to be? So it's up to the quilters is the answer.
Yeah, my recipient had said in our conversation, she was like, I'm not a minimalist, but, and I was like, oh no, because I'm just using like all the combinations of colors and patterns and textures, in my own quilts. And so it's like, okay, I'll try to have like 3 colors as opposed to like
Mhm.
17. But yeah.
Yeah, those are scary words. I'm not a minimalist.
I know. I was like, but are you actually? Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's wonderful. And I think we have covered all of our questions. And but I just want to thank y'all so much. This has been an amazing conversation, and thank you for taking the time to do the interview and to be here live talking. And thanks to everyone who left a comment. The support and the love in the chat is overwhelming. And I think I need to also say thank you to our sponsors. And I want to encourage everyone to support this project, to support Textile Talks and Quilt Alliance, and also to remember, I think a really important takeaway is to support the trans folks in your community. That's where it starts. And yeah, so that's a great message. And yes, and I'm gonna leave with what Deborah says. Love, love, love. Thank
Mm.
you, everyone. Please notice that Lucy has put the resource page for this presentation. Go to transquilts.net/collaborate. And thank you so much for spending your time with us. And again, Cordy and D, that was just marvelous. Thank you so, so much. Take care, everyone.
Thank you for having us. Thank you
So
so much,
much.
everyone.
Take care.